Well, good afternoon. It is Thursday, December the 29th, and welcome back to the shop. I can't believe we've only got a few more days till the end of 2022. Good riddance. Maybe 2023 will be a lot better. So what are we going to do today? Well, if you remember this problem that I had covered about 3 months ago when I was driving the car at night, is the tachometer is simply too bright. Now, it has nothing to do with the LED kit that I put into the rest of the car. I mean, those work wonderfully, and I would recommend them wholeheartedly that if you want to brighten your dashboard, buy the LED kit for the cluster. The problem is the tachometer is just an aftermarket tachometer, costs $79, and it's just brighter than I want it to be. The good news is it's dimmable, right? Obviously, when I turn the dimmer switch on the headlight switch, everything dims on the dash. Problem is the tachometer is still too bright. So what we need to do is simply dim the tachometer independently, and we're going to use a resistor to do that. How do we know how powerful a resistor? I'll show you in a few seconds. But before we get to the bench, a couple of things that we can update you on. Of course, we all know I took care of number one, which is the auto fog kit. I just took it out. Number two, the headlight aim and dimmer switch, we took care of about 3 or 4 videos ago. Interior rattles, well, as I mentioned before, this car had a rattle that was driving me crazy. It was in the passenger rear seat, and I just couldn't figure it out. So eventually I ended up having to just take the whole thing apart. I took the interior apart, back seats out, and everything like that. I gave the car a couple of shots with my fist, and you could hear the buzz. So it's like, okay, what's rattling? And I'm trying to figure it out. Well, there are about 5 bolts that hold the entire window assembly in the rear quarter, right? Because you have power windows, so there's a window assembly, there's a bunch of tracks and everything. One of those 5 bolts was loose. I didn't tighten it. There it is. I made a mistake. Loose bolt, rattled, I tightened it up, no problem, put the whole thing back together, so we're good there. Alternator, that was a whole video on its own. We put the double pulleys in it. The clutch pedal, I went through it one more time. I just went underneath the car and I shimmed the clutch pedal a little bit just to stop the left to right on the Z-bar, and that seemed to have straightened it out, but it was working 80% anyways, 90%, the way I like it. It might just stay that way. Hood turn signals. I have ordered and have received both the left and right turn signal assembly kits, right? So that's the entire inserts and the grill and everything I need to put the new inserts in this car. Of course, that means I have to prep them and paint them. That may be until spring, because I'm not going to paint in the winter time for ventilation, number one. And number two, that paint may not lie down as good as it did when I painted this car in the warmth. And let's save that, no rush. Next thing that we wanted to take care of, of course, is the rear end ratio. That's going to probably wait till the spring as well. That means pulling the rear end of this car and changing the gears out, because the 279s that are in there now, that came stock with the car because it had a 3-speed automatic. So they put a very tall gear in there so that when you're on the highway, at least you're under 3,000 RPM at 70 miles an hour. But with my T5, I don't have to worry about that. So the problem is that the gear is just too small for a 5-speed transmission. We were going to go with a 325, or some of my subscribers even said a 350, so we're going to be going probably with a 350, but that'll come. Tach to brake, that's today's episode. Headrest, not yet. Brake pedal. I remember complaining that the brake pedal just seems so stiff, and what I mean by that is when I apply the brakes come on. I mean, this car will lock all 4 wheels up if I wanted to, but that brake feels hard. It's not spongy at the end. I mean, it's like I'm coming into a brick wall. And I thought, maybe I had screwed up. Maybe what I had done is the brake booster has a push rod in it, right? That when inside you press the brake pedal, it pushes the booster. The booster has vacuum assist and pushes that push rod into the master cylinder, applying the brakes. I thought maybe that push rod was too far out. I put the master cylinder on, and it was already pushing it, even though I hadn't been touching the brakes. You don't know, right? Took it all apart. Not a problem. And then I guess I thought myself through. I mean, everything's got stainless steel braided hoses on this thing. There are no spongy pedals because there's no sponge in the brakes. So that just could be it. We'll see. I mean, we didn't really get a good year out of the car yet. We've only been in the car for, 2 months, 3 months. So next year we'll figure that out. The e-brake adjust. Well, the e-brake, as I said before, you pull the e-brake on this car and it was coming right to the end. It held good, but it was already at the end. So very simple fix. Go underneath the car where the cable comes down and splits into two. There's an adjustable nut. You just tighten that nut a little bit more, and then that draws the cable a little tighter. I could have gone to each wheel well and adjusted it there, but you know what? It works fine the way it is. And the last, of course, is the lifter adjust. The car's got a slight tick. Again, very simple to fix. I'll probably wait till a nice warm day to take it outside so I don't kill myself in here and run the engine. So, like I said, but anyways, that's the list. We're almost done with the list, so only a few things left. Anyways, let's hit the bench. Okay, welcome back to the bench. Well, it's a little bright in this room right now, so you're not seeing the gauges very well, but they are quite well lit and they're nicely blue. But of course, the tachometer is just way too bright. Now, the good news is all of these are dimmable LEDs. And how does a dimming LED work? Well, it's all about resistance. The more resistance you add to the power going to an LED, the darker or dimmer the LED is. Now, in my case, how do we adjust the brightness of this LED so it matches the rest? Well, number one could be, I could sit here with a bunch of different resistors, keep trying them in series with the power to dim that the way I want it. The other option would be if I was very smart at math, I could figure out the current draw, the voltage drop across this LED, determine what type of resistor I could use to then drop the LED by, 20 or 30%. Well, certainly that's not the way I'm going to do it. The way I went about it is very simple. I bought a potentiometer. Now, what is a potentiometer? It's really nothing more than a variable resistor. Think of it as a dimmer switch. So what I'm going to be able to do is turn the variable resistor, and I'm adding more and more resistance to the circuit that feeds the light going to the tachometer. Now, as you can see, I've dropped it back quite a bit. In fact, I think I like that. I might add a little bit more brightness. So there we go. I think that is perfect. It matches the rest. It's not so bright. Remember, this is how bright it was. We're going to bring it back to about there. Still makes it readable, but not too bright. Okay, now we know how we want to dim the LED. The question is, how do we make it a little bit more permanent than this? Well, let me show you. All I do is disconnect the power, bring my multimeter in, and now I read the resistance of this potentiometer where I had it set. It's 359 ohms, 360 ohms, 361 ohms. So the idea is that I'm in that 360 ohms of resistance. Well, the problem is where I live, I don't exactly have a Radio Shack of the old days. So I went to any place that could sell me discrete electronics, and the best I found was a 390 ohm resistor. And that 390 ohm resistor comes in a package. There they all are there. And basically what I did is I bought what's referred to as a half watt resistor. So you can see the resistor is a little bit big. And the reasoning is I'm going to dropping voltage across it, right? Because of course we know the resistance we need to add in series with that LED. I'm going to now permanently mount this resistor in series, which will bring this down to the normal. But since there's a voltage drop across any resistor, it'll generate a little bit of heat. Now, a 1/4 watt resistor means it'll obviously dissipate 1/4 watt of energy. But being that it's an LED, it's not going to draw any current at all, barely. So a 1/2 watt is way overkill, but that's how I like doing things. I'd rather have too much capacity than not enough. So we now have, as I mentioned, a 390 ohm 1/2 watt resistor, and I'm going to now solder this permanently in series with the power line that feeds the LED bulb, and I'll be right back. So there we go. That resistor has now dropped the brightness of that LED so that it better matches the rest of the display. So I'm really happy with that. Now the good news is that when I put this back in the car, it will still work. I mean, when I use the headlight dimmer, all of these will still dim, all of these will still brighten up, but this one will never brighten too much. It'll always be balanced now going forward. Now, for any 12-volt application, remember, we're not talking housing here, but for a 12-volt application, if you find there's a bulb that's too bright or you want to dim something up a bit, get a variable resistor like I did, put it in series with that light bulb, and then you can literally dim that bulb exactly the way you want it, and then just simply use a meter to measure the resistance of that variable resistor, and then go buy a resistor and then put it in place permanently. So that's it. I hope I was able to help you. If you enjoyed that video, hit that like button. I guess it's time for me to go put this back in the car, and I'll see you next time.